Well, welcome everybody. I'm incredibly excited to see so many faces here. Sometimes when we set up talks like this, we'll have 3 to 5 people turn out, and it's always very exciting to see so many people. So my name is Caleb Putnam. I work for the National Audubon Society. We have 700 employees that are stationed throughout the United States. I am the only employee in the state of Michigan.
Why is that?
Funding, basically. And we're working on it and have been for some time. It's a difficult thing to get a state office.
Very lonely.
It is.
Very busy.
Yeah.
However, Tara Weiland of Detroit Audubon is here, and she is, what do you want to say?
Program coordinator?
Right, I was going to use you're a wing woman of sorts, because I have had no help promoting the project like this, and Tara has been a tremendous help. She was just hired by Detroit Audubon as a program coordinator, and I feel less and less lonely over time. I also have to introduce Randy Kling, who is my lead volunteer on the project I'm about to tell you all about. For 3 years, if we had the money, this dude probably would have made a second retirement out of the amount of work that he has put in out here. And the day I win the Powerball, you'll be sure to see the fruits of all of that. In the meantime, this guy has contributed more to black tern conservation than anybody, for sure, in the state of Michigan ever. And it's a wonderful thing, so we really appreciate. Okay, show of hands. How many of you have been on the flats and seen that weird black bird?
Here?
Yeah, or anywhere for that matter. Yeah? And
Yes, you don't know.
have you heard the little screeching, squawking noises that they make as you get your boat in anywhere near their colonies?
How does it sound?
Randy?
I couldn't duplicate it.
Just a sharp, piercing,
Yeah.
peek, 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 just screaming at you.
You know it when you hear it, though.
Yes, you do. So, I want to tell you the story about this bird and why it's more important than you recognize than it actually was, and why St. Clair Flats is such a important special location. It's the area of channels where the St. Clair River dumps into Lake St. Clair, and you have all these different channels that work out. There's the Freighter Channel, and then all the ones to the west of that, where there's sort of this shallow water, a lot of silted deposition of sand, and there's just vast tracts of bulrush marsh. So as you get out there in the boats, over the next couple of summers, you'll see this very large acre, like thousands of acres of bulrush marsh. And in fact, it's the largest, make sure I get this right, freshwater delta in the world. That's the statistic on this. Late 1800s, early 1900s, the millinery trade, where folks were taking the aigrette feathers off of the backs of great egrets in the Florida Everglades and slaughtering full colonies of these birds just to put the feathers in the ladies' caps, was the conservation issue that was the impetus for the formation of National Audubon Society. That specific issue was why it happened. And so our organization was able to take something that nobody thought you could stem the tide on that issue, and take a mentality like this and change it into a mentality like this. And so Audubon is dedicated to wild bird conservation for the benefit of both people and birds and wildlife. And all of the work that we do at the end of the day is focused on helping prevent the extinction of any bird species over the long term. And we go about it from all different aspects. So we have a very strong science component, including on this project. We have scientists who have put out this climate report, which is a looming threat that 314 species over the next 80 years are what we consider climate threatened. It's actually a major conservation issue while we're looking into this and trying to figure out abatement strategies to protect these species over the long haul, because it's a highly complicated issue. Now, my involvement with National Audubon is as the IBA program coordinator. That's the Important Bird Areas program. So when I was hired 9 years ago, I immediately assembled a scientific advisory team, and we went methodically through all of the bird data for the state of Michigan, and we created a set of criteria to determine which sites in the state of Michigan are most critical to bird conservation over the long haul, moving forward. So this isn't the passenger pigeons and the species that have been extinct or that are right on the edge. This incorporates species that are not yet in danger of going extinct, but that the trajectory that they are on right now is very scary and ones that we need to get ahead of the ball game on, and that's where black terns come in. So I'm so excited to talk to you guys about this today. We have 102 sites in the state of Michigan, of which St. Clair Flats and Harson's Island is one. And this is what the IBA network looks like throughout the entire United States. So you can kind of see we're one of the last states to implement, and we're one of the last continents and countries to implement this program. It's been around since the 80s. We're kind of like the taillights on the caboose of the train, is the way I like to describe it. We're really bringing up the rear, and that's okay. Okay, here's your St. Clair Flats map. So we are here in Algonac. Now this entire delta system here is all deposited silts that are coming down the St. Clair River, and it's, like I say, it's a gigantic area. You know, the wooden boats everybody drives out there in the summertime. It's kind of when I've been out, there's these, I don't know a lot about it, but the historic wooden boats it's like almost like a hobby that there's people out there constantly going through all these channels, and when you talk to those folks, they know these birds. They're so familiar with them. The other thing that's worth pointing out is that you've got the tribal Canadian side over here, and totally different management regime on that side. And in fact, this year was the first year where we even took a boat trip over to see what the black tern situation was on the other side, and found out that really they had very few birds compared to us. So in the state of Michigan for black terns, this area of Bulrush Marsh is the largest black tern colony in the entire state, and one of the largest colonies in the Great Lakes region. You know that thing where sometimes folks who live where a certain species is abundant think, well, that's just a really common bird. There's no special importance to it. They're all over the place. I see them all the time. It's easy to think that if you're at the flats all the time. But the truth of the matter is this species has been lost from like 60 to 70% of its colonies in the last 40 years. And we don't know why they are going down like that. And all the data out there show the same thing. So we put together the St. Clair Flats Marsh Tern Group. Harson's Island in St. Clair Flats is managed by the Michigan DNR. So we immediately brought them on board. They've been an amazing partner on this project, especially for duck hunting funded management. They are completely funded by game money, and yet they're interested in working with us and providing in-kind services to help conserve a non-game bird, the black tern. It's been a wonderful partnership. We've got a great partnership going. Detroit Zoo has contributed all kinds of stuff, including these amazing decoy eggs, which look exactly like a black tern egg. I'd love to have you come up and take a look at these. I'll get into why we have these in a minute. Detroit Audubon has come on, and since the beginning, they've been funding the project. We have one of the world's black tern experts from Loras College in Iowa, Dave Sheeler, who has been a really good project manager for us and science advisor. So anyway, enough talk about all that technical stuff. Let's get into it. So that is St. Clair Flats. Notice how I go to the habitat and birds before people. Ask my mother about that. I do that all the time. This is Randy. This is John Darling of Michigan DNR. He's the local biologist on Harson's Island, and myself. And that is the bulrush marsh that I was just talking about. Now this is in May before the new stems are up. So all these brown stems are from the previous year, and they're dead. So one of the neat things that happens with these stems, when they die, the ice and freeze up will lock them up, and sometimes they get torn off, right? And then they eventually fall into the water. Well, many of them may float away, but others get caught in back pocket areas of the marsh, and this happens all throughout the marsh. And it forms these mats of floating vegetation because it's a very spongy, the plant itself is very spongy. So black terns are crazy, in my opinion, so I thought. They put their egg on the floating mat of dead vegetation on the top of the water, literally an inch off of the water. And if the egg goes through, it's gone, right to the bottom. That's the only place black terns place their nests. And when we first went out there, we're just looking at this going, how in the world does a species survive?
Yeah.
But if you study them as long as we have, you start to see that it's actually a really ingenious solution, because mammals have to swim a long way to get out there to find them. And they're really good at, every time the mats get pushed away by storms or the chicks die, they just re-nest. They just find a new spot and they re-nest. This was the first meeting of our black tern team out on Harson's Island. Richard Quick of Detroit Audubon, that's Dave Sheeler and Terry McFadden of the DNR, and John Darling of the DNR. The initial goals of the project, I don't want to get technical in this talk, but just so you know what we're doing. There's two ways that black terns can be declining. One, they're not having enough babies, and two, their adults aren't living out their lives long enough to replace themselves. Does that make sense? So there's adult survivorship and there's fecundity. And when you're working in the breeding colonies, you mainly get to look at the baby side of things. It's really hard to get at the other side, although stay tuned, we're working on it. The original project goals were to estimate breeding success, to just get a handle on how many birds are out there, where are they putting their nests, and how are those doing, how are the nests doing, and how are the chicks doing as they hatch. And this nest failure thing, we really wanted to know, is there a certain predator that's eating all the nests, and then we could get rid of the predator, and then suddenly your black terns come back? And as I said, the adult thing versus juveniles. So let me start by just showing some photos. This is a gorgeous bird, and that is actually bigger than life size. They're not this big. They're much smaller than a gull. What would you say, Randy? In terms of the body, it's like a robin size.
Like a robin. You can hold the
Yeah.
in one hand.
But the wing is way, way bigger than that of a robin. So they're very graceful and light on their wings. In the summertime, the adult is got that jet black body. And then interesting thing we found out is that, normally you would think the bird turns white later in the fall after breeding is completely done, right? And then in the wintertime, they're completely white-bodied. What we found is, even in mid-June, they start turning into winter plumage, which is I did not actually know that.
Do they lay several eggs on?
They lay 3.
And then
It's highly specific. Occasionally there'll be 2, and occasionally there'll be 4, although we haven't seen it yet,
I've never
right?
seen a 4 out here.
Yeah, we've not seen a 4. The normal clutch size is almost always 3. Yeah, it's highly ordered and specific what they're doing. That is this year's baby right when they begin to take flight. So you can see how different they look than the adult. They've got that little nick of black, and then this is actually a really good field mark, that little breast spur that extends below the wing. Really good field mark. I expect you all to report all of your sightings back to me now that you know everything about black terns. I have to draw attention to Forster's tern too. How many of you have seen that out there on the... Okay. So these guys might be even more visible. I think they're a little bit more numerous, and they're more common up and down the river here, throughout the season. So that is a Forster's tern. It's a little bit bigger bird, and this is the interesting thing, it's the only other species of tern that we have that also lays its eggs on the floating dead mats. Right? So these two are partners in crime, no doubt about it. They're always nesting side by side. And this is the other thing. Part of the reason that is a successful strategy is because if a predator comes near anybody's nest, they're very colonial and semi-colonial, they'll all be in one area. They all attack the predator as a group. So you will literally, if you get out there and wait long enough, as Randy well knows, you'll eventually see 50, sometimes 100 birds, not necessarily in the flats, but you will get 100 birds attacking a northern harrier, the hawk, as it's flying through, and that hawk just gets out of dodge. And it's a highly successful defense strategy. So initially, this is Forster's tern again. It's a very beautiful bird. We were trying to study them as well. We had a harder time working with them, and they nest quite a bit earlier, so we actually are really focused mainly on black terns right now. But it's also just worth noting that the Flats is one of the state's largest Forster's tern colonies as well, not just black. That bird is actually on its nest. And make sure, can you see it? It's extremely inconspicuous, and I think one of the good things, it's so difficult, if people don't know that they would nest on these floating mats, so the people riding their boats out there it doesn't occur to them, well, maybe I could drive the boat over there and check it out. So that it's kind of that safety in the ignorance of the predator, you know what I mean? But what you have to do to find these is literally, Randy's got the hip waders, and you actually jump out and you just walk, you're trouncing through the water like this, pushing aside all the vegetation. And you have to get close, and sometimes you realize, oh my gosh, I'm standing right next to the thing. And the nest, so they'll put together like smaller stems and kind of build it up a few inches. And then the 3 eggs go there. Takes them about 21 to 22 days for the thing to hatch. And then another 3 to 4 weeks before those chicks are ready to fly. So it's a long process of investment for these guys. So here's what the predators are that we were concerned about. There's great blue heron, which are definitely present out there. But when the problem is the water's so deep that they can't perch in it, they would just be swimming, so they don't land. So that's one of the things about having the Great Lakes where it is now. It's so high.
They can't land on the floating, no?
Have you ever seen it?
I have not seen any out there.
They don't
that
try.
far.
They don't try. I don't think that they're keyed in that there's a food source there. Now, black-crowned night herons is a nocturnal species. It's smaller, and that is exactly how they forage. So we are really watching carefully to see if they show up. And if they do, we might have to do something about that. But so far, we haven't seen them out there yet. But here's the thing: you have mink, you have muskrat, which we believe are eating the eggs at least some of the time. What are the other potential ones?
Black water snake.
Yeah, water snake. Randy this year found quite a few more northern water snakes than normal, but mainly little guys, and they.
Especially when you're walking waist deep stuff, all of a sudden you're looking, he's sitting right there looking at you.
Yeah.
So say if you found out that the muskrat was the predator of these birds, how would you divert the muskrats from going into the area without harming the muskrat population?
That is exactly the conversation we would have with the DNR at that point. I think that's very unlikely to happen. Those are mainly vegetarian. But, if you've got babies and if you see a little extra protein sitting there for the taking, you'll probably take it even if you're a vegetarian. But, by and large, we don't believe that muskrats are going to be one of the big things. And again, every bird is going to experience nest predation. It's just a question of, are they losing a disproportionate amount of their nests and chicks? And that's really what we're looking for. So, an extreme example, you've got Kirtland's warblers up in the northern Lower Peninsula, which their eggs were being completely decimated by brown-headed cowbirds, which remove the Kirtland's warbler egg and lay their own egg in there. Then the warbler raises the cowbird baby, and they studied this back in the 70s. The Kirtland's warbler almost went extinct. It was down to 167 singing males. Thank you. I planted her in the audience for that. So it's down to 167 singing males in the entire world. And somebody went in and looked at how many of the nests were being hit by cowbirds, and each bird was only putting out 0.7 youngsters a year, right, ballpark. And they're supposed to be each pair is supposed to be putting out 3 point something youngsters per year. So in that case, you have got to get rid of the cowbirds, or the warbler literally is going to go extinct in front of your eyes. So we may not have something that severe out here, but if we did, you'd have, I'm not really a mammal guy, but I'm sure there'd be a solution. Exclosures maybe something to deal with, getting the muskrats in a certain area of the colony out. But at this point, I don't think that's happening. So the other thing, these guys are fiercely protective, and I tried to come up with a video clip. If you're getting anywhere near the nest and young, and I don't know how many times you've been pricked in the head.
You have to wear a hat out.
Yeah, you have to wear a hat. But and it's a very lightweight bird. It's only like 60 grams, but the beak is awful sharp. And this guy came in and just bam, like pops me right in the skull. I really felt it too. Now the other thing that's interesting about these guys, black terns don't plunge dive. Have you all seen those foresters out here when they're foraging and they just boom straight into the water, right underwater, and then they get out and they shake off and fly away? These guys never do that. And in fact, I've never actually seen one sitting on the water. Have you?
No.
But you will see the foresters and stuff doing that. They're comfortable. These guys pick off the surface, but they don't get wet. And then we also see them eating insects. So I was super lucky to have that that exposure work out like that. And maybe that's like a spider thing with a baby spider sac or something.
You got a couple shots of them getting
Yeah.
bugs in the air.
Yeah.
This is-
So we also surveyed, this is Randy and I, one of the goals of the project has been to start getting better data in other areas of the state so that we understand where the other large colonies are. So we went up to Tawas Lake. Y'all know where that's at? Tawas Birding Festival and that whole thing. We had 161 adults in 1 day's worth of surveying at this lake, which makes that almost as big as our colony here. And that was a huge result. We had no idea. We also found that when you get out into the marsh up there, I just about jumped out of the boat to try to walk up to the nests, and I'm just like, I better test this first. Somebody give me the paddle. And I punched the paddle down and like this, never hit the bottom. It was pure muck, and I'm probably wouldn't be here today if I had jumped in. So this is again give you an idea of how colonial they are. They really just do operate as a group. I think this is at Tawas Lake. That's a muskrat lodge. And there is one of the nests up there. Now, it's interesting. Up there, the marsh is not just bulrush. There's a lot of cattail and lily pad roots. And so one of the interesting things with terns, it's not the species of dead floating organism and plant that they nest on. It's the structure of it. In fact, Dave Sheeler, when he was beginning his studies in Wisconsin, he actually found them nesting on a picnic table in the marsh. So when you go up here, this is real. If you step on this or push it, it's real mucky, and the whole thing will, kind of sink and then come back up and do all this. It's got the pineapple-looking lily pad roots. So they don't really care, but what they do care about is that they have a really large marsh where the mammals have to swim a long way to get to where the nests are. And that's why we think that the flats have them in big numbers every single year. Because a raccoon has to go 1.5 miles to get there. It's never going to make it. The birds know they're going to be safe. And they are just the prettiest thing you've ever seen when you get to hold the babies. This guy's probably held more babies than anybody in Michigan.
That guy's banded.
And he is banded. That's why I threw that one in there. You see that when they come out, they're probably this long, and they're precocial, so they're fully feathered, and they're able to sort of pick it and eat on their own. That said, since they're picking fish, out of the adults have to help them find food. But here's what is so interesting about this: they will sit here sometimes only for a day or two, and then as you come back to check on the nest, because we want to track all these nests through, this guy, almost at this size, will jump ship and get right into the water and start paddling away. And so to try to find them, we get up real high on the boat like this as we're pulling into the colony, and I'm looking, and you can see the pitter-patter of the legs swing away. And then Randy will jump out of the boat and run in there and chase them down. And they are absolutely adorable little birds.
One thing on chicks, everybody always asks me, their legs are big enough where you can ban them like the second day right out of the egg. Their legs don't grow that much more
That's right.
than they are when they're an adult.
Well, there's the problem, they're jumping in the water, something's eating them from underneath.
It's a very adroit observation. So one of the topics that's a big hot topic right now, and we just had our coordination meeting with all the partners, is bass, muskie, and pike, which are all present out there. And the answer is we have no information about this. We suspect that at least some of these swimming around, I guess you would call those, what would you call them? They're not a hatchling at that point. They're a...
Yeah, they're not fledgling either. They're
Yeah, because they haven't flown yet. They're a...
yeah.
Swimling.
A swimling, thank you.
Snapping turtles would be a big one too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then you've got the snakes that could be trailing them. So but again, this is expected. This is very, very normal for a population. It's just trying to figure out if there's something that's disproportionate. So I have to draw attention to something in the picture here. If you look carefully, you can see this Tupperware box and then a metal contraption with a net on it. So this is the nest here. And what that is a bow trap, which I actually had Randy bring. The netting is currently off, but we'll get it back on. So this is the contraption that allows us to capture the adult birds so that we can put bands on their legs and get measurements and bloods, look at contaminant analysis, make sure that when they're wintering in the Caribbean and offshore of South America, which they're in the equatorial oceans, we have no information on them in the wintertime, almost none. This is allow us to get a beginning of information about what is happening in the winter areas. It's one of the big unknowns. So we get out into the colony, we have 2 of these, we jump out of the boat and we work our way. It's all federally and state permitted. You know, you have to be official to be able to do any of this stuff.
Scary.
Yeah, well, so these hinges are rat trap hinges. They're not very strong, and it's just quick enough that it gives you a quick enough action to get them. But if it hits their body, it doesn't hurt them. It just pushes them aside. So we've really tweaked the design and stuff with the care of the bird in mind, and we've never heard of one being injured, let alone seen one. All the ones we've caught there's no problem at all. So that's radio controlled operated. We also capture the adults passively using these 2 designs here. So basically what you're doing is you're putting this over the nest and you take out the real eggs so that if there's a struggle involved, the bird doesn't crush the real eggs. I know it sounds like you're gonna kill the egg and stuff. Trust me, you never do. What you do, if it's cooler out, you just don't do it at all, because then you can cool the eggs off. But if it's a warmer day, if anything, the eggs probably get too hot. So these methods have been done for the last 20 years, and it's all published. There's no effect on the birds, but we're very careful to make sure that we're having no impact. And if we think we are, we would stop. But in any event, we take the real eggs out. We have a array of colors to choose from so that we can match to the real eggs. Some of them are greener and some of them are darker brown. So the Detroit Zoo actually made these from molds of a real egg. So that is literally the exact dimensions that black terns have. I can pass a couple of those around. You place that over the nest with the dummy eggs, and then the bird will come up and try to get in to incubate, and they'll crawl through the hole. And then once they get in there, they're not able to get out because the opening's too small to flap their wings out of it. So they kind of get trapped, and you run up and grab them. So
you're watching them as this is all happening?
Oh yeah, it's highly focused and orchestrated, and you would never leave it unattended. We pull the boat back maybe like 100 feet away. You place the traps, and Randy's on this one, I'm on this one, and we hide and we sit there and we wait and wait. I tell you, my quadriceps from standing like this for 20 minutes. And the bird will hover and hover and hover and come on, you can do it, get in there. So
they'll land on it, they'll do everything but go in.
They do everything but go in. That's why we went to the bow traps last year, because you don't have to deal with the bird not wanting to go in the trap. So anyway, just give you an idea of the kind of stuff we're doing. That's another one of the chicks. That one's probably 2 to 3 days old. But the adult bird is 60 grams, and when they hatch, they're about 7 grams. And it takes them, what do we think, 3 to 4 weeks to get to the full adult size. But they develop so quickly. It's really impressive. One last thing I want to draw attention to. You see a little white thing on the top of the, what we would call in ornithology the maxilla? You might just say the upper mandible. That's the pip tooth. Helps them to knock the eggshell out, and then it's dropped after a couple of days, yeah. So this guy still has a remnant of it, and he won't have it for much longer. It'll just fall off. Now it's a little bit gory. We thought this is a mink, we thought he was eating the black tern chicks as we sat there in the boat. This is actually on the Canadian side last summer, because this bulrush mat had black terns nesting on it a little over to the left here. So this mink would come across the channel. The reason we knew there was a mink is because all the adults were just attacking the water. Boom, 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 diving in. And he comes across the channel, goes right through the tern colony, and we're going, oh my gosh, we're going to witness him eating the chicks, you know. And it goes past the terns, and then it comes out 10 minutes later, and it's got what we later found out was a baby muskrat. So it found a muskrat nest somewhere, and it was picking them off, taking them back to her, presumably to feed its own babies. And that's the adults mobbing the mink in the water. Really something to watch. I mean, they're just right on it, you know, tapping the thing's head. And they even caused them to change course and drop the prey item. They're so aggressive, you know. Another problem that we've had, I don't want to get too technical, but so, you know, we want to know how each chick does all the way to the end of the process. We would ideally know if they made it to flying stage or not, right? The problem is, since the time it hatches, within 1 or 2 days, that bird will jump off the nest and swim away. So if you go out there to try to figure out, did it make it this far or not, and you don't find it, you don't know if it just swam off and you lost it, or if it died. And that's a very important distinction. So in order to control for that, this has been done experimentally just on a handful of nests, not on very many. We create these enclosures. Now these are only used during the incubation stage when the thing can't leave anyway. And so this is actually a PVC pipe that the adults love to stand on these things. And then we'll come back out right after hatching occurs, before they're able to swim away. And then we can say for sure, yes, they hatched. All 3 hatched or 0 hatched. And then Randy will pull that exclosure out immediately. And then those birds are free to swim off. So that's helped us to get a little bit clarity on hatching success. Randy's got a kit in the boat. You know, you catch the adults or the chicks, you process them, you want to tell it? You weigh them,
Well, yeah, the chicks we just weigh. The adults, I take about 4 different measurements on them. Wing length, you can tell the male from female from the head to the end of the bill. Male's a little longer, female's a little shorter, and we measure the bill. Actually, Dave Sheeler uses all that data. He gets all our data. But we try to tell male and female. Kind of hard sometimes because a male like 60, 61 millimeters, but you get a lot of 59, 60, so you're not sure if it's a male or female. That's why a lot of times we tried to trap both adults from the same nest. That way you can tell what the male and what the female is.
right.
But,
It's not like mammals where the undercarriage will
and we
help
weigh
you.
them, of course. Yeah.
And
Like I
birds.
said, a couple of chicks, I go back 2, 3 days, I find them again, and I was weighing some of them just to see. They would gain 2 grams, about 2 grams a day, from what I could tell.
Yeah, I mean, you can't believe how quickly these things put on mass. It's unbelievable. My 10-year-old daughter is the size of a 7-year-old right now. And if I could give her black tern genetics, she'd be my size.
We're talking about banding. This is a goose band. All right, this is a duck band. That is a tern band.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You pass it around?
Yeah.
I'm sure they can.
You can see the pip tooth on this little guy. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, Randy, but this one may be wet.
He's still wet. That was
Yeah, so
that day sometime.
yeah, so usually the birds come out of the egg are wet for about a half a day. The only thing is, obviously, it might have swum away and gotten wet, you know, just from
Yeah,
swimming,
quite
but
a
that's,
few wet ones there.
yeah. So another thing in the counties in Wisconsin that has helped is Dave Sheeler, and again, he's been working like 20 years now. He developed these artificial platforms to try to see, is it possible that they aren't nesting well enough on the natural substrate and that they would use these platforms and we could help them out. And he had wonderful results with this. They occupied the platforms, the breeding success was higher, they put out more chicks. So we actually got 22 of these platforms from him, from Iowa. We put them out on the flats in 2013, our first year, and the birds literally laughed at us and nested 2 feet from the platforms. They didn't use them. There were a couple attempts, but they didn't even complete this.
No, never had an egg in one.
I think we may have like 1 egg on one. One egg, yeah. They didn't even complete the clutch. So that's what those looked like when we did the array the first year. We haven't used them since because they don't need them. Kind see if we have any better photos of the mats. The mats kind of build up in these back openings like this. This particular photo doesn't have them, but the mats are easy to miss, and you might, if you go in there as a layman, you might look at it and go, that's just kind of junky, trashy, not of value, but it's of such high value for these birds. And the flats always has an abundance of floating dead mats of vegetation, whereas in Wisconsin and possibly up in the Upper Peninsula at Ogons Bay, which is a site that we're going to be working on this summer. This is actually the second site that we're going to be working on. They do not always have these floating mats. So this is yet another reason why St. Clair Flats is such a treasure. Give you an idea where the nests were. This is aerial imagery. Whoops. Seems like it's advancing by itself. So on this map, we would be up here somewhere.
Yep.
Harson's Island's over toward this side. And then this is
That's a snide going through.
the Snai Channel.
Everybody
Yep.
knows the area.
So there's houses along all those vacation houses and such. There's some here. This is Strawberry, which gets out to the very end over here. The orange pins are the exact location of a nest during 2013. So we had extensive mats in the Baltimore colony, and these two were called Doty, and then Goose Bay and Strawberry. Now just look at how this switches between years. This is 2014. Baltimore disappears. The mats were not there that year, and that's no big deal. This is exactly what the birds are used to. So Mackay and Doty colony appeared and really had more birds. Strawberry started to see more nestings, and we also have birds in this middle area now. Last year, that's what we found. So the ones that were in this area conglomerated here, and Strawberry colony just absolutely took off. I mean, it was loaded with birds this year. It was great. Now, if they did start to put boat traffic through the bulrush mats, that would be a tremendous problem. We've never seen it. We're going to keep watching for it. I will say, in the colony in the UP that we're about to begin working on this summer, not only has my partner up there seen airboats at night going through in the breeding season, which is a huge problem, and it's really hard to enforce that. If you look at the aerial imagery, you can see in the winter that the ATVs are going all through there too. So, these are on our radar screen, but for the moment at the flats, the boat traffic that we see, the birds are safe because people aren't paying attention to them when they go through there. And they don't want to put their boats in the vegetation because they think they're going to bottom out. That's what we think.
You get stuck, you
Right.
Yeah.
lose your prop.
Get the motor hooked up with all the crud, So I have to put in a plug for thunderstorms, not a plug, a condemnation of thunderstorms. Thunderstorms are clearly the number one threat to eggs hatching. We see it every year. The stronger thunderstorms will come in, and Randy will show up to his GPS, and the mat of vegetation is 300 meters away that all the nests were on, and all the eggs are washed into the water and dead. The good thing is, the adults live long lives, and they don't have just one egg like an albatross does or a penguin. They have 3, so it's not as much as a pheasant or a grouse that has maybe 10 or 12 eggs. But the point being, as long as the adults live out their lives, they can take a few years off and they'll still be able to replace their numbers. However, if the adults are not living out their lives, then they don't have the opportunity to replace their numbers. That is the population demographic work that we're just beginning to get our feet wet on. Here's the game for these guys. They show up as soon as the weather allows, and the earliest attempts we've ever seen would be like May 5th to 10th. But as you all know, it's still very cold out most years that early, so their chances are low because the eggs are going to get cold. So what happens is more by late May, and certainly as you get into mid-June, you have the maximum amount of nesting occurring at once. And up until July 4th to 10th, roughly, the birds know they still have time to pull it off through the end of August. But when you hit July 10th, as soon as the nest fails, they go right back. And we don't know if they go to Lake Erie. What we do know is they don't stay in the flats. The instant they call it off and they call it a season, they're out of here. They bail. So that's one of the things we want to know how many of the babies have come to fledgling age and flown away. The problem is we don't know that they don't do the same thing. The baby might take flight and the adult says, all right, let's go. Let's get out of here. Better feeding out in Lake Erie. And then they're gone. So yeah, why don't we play a game? You win the first one. That is a marsh wren, you're correct. And I wanted to draw attention to how many interesting things you see when you're out on the flats. It's really, black terns are just the tip of the iceberg. So marsh wren is a rare species in the state. They're also one of our IBA conservation concern birds, and they are everywhere out there. It's a wonderful place. Anybody? These little bald alien guys, redheads, close.
It's moorhen.
Yes, that is a common moorhen clutch of chicks. Somewhere in here I've got an adult picture too. Who said it?
She did.
You're ahead 2-1 now. Randy will be.
Because I'm not real good at shorebirds either.
Randy will be paying the winner in cash at the end of this.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, yeah.
So this is just mind-boggling. Okay, these Arctic breeding shorebirds that bird is literally going to be breeding up in Nunavut, and it came in from probably the Gulf Coast. This is late May, so the Arctic has not yet broken out of ice. So normally these guys are on mud flats. Well, look at this. That is beneath this 1 inch is open water. There's no mud flat whatsoever. And we didn't even know they were doing this, but we were literally 10 feet. These birds just sat me to you. I had my lens out.
I think they were tired or something, because we got 10 feet from it, they did not move.
They didn't care. And I'd never thought we would see that on the flats. Anybody want to? That's also my photo, believe it or not. 3-1.
She knows her birds.
I can see that. That is an American bittern. And it's a migratory heron. It's a little bit smaller than great blue. Much more secretive and much more conservation concern. This is actually another IBA trigger species. And generally speaking, they don't nest this far south. Most of them go up north. So St. Clair Flats is an amazing enough marsh that it will hold them at this latitude. And that bird is actually nesting down here. We've seen
I'm
them.
gonna hear their song now.
Does anybody have it?
No, you have to make it.
Actually, I'll try. And I got to get in the. They got that, you know. That's sorry. That's all I got. I'm rusty. It's the end of winter. You know what I mean? Northern pintails in the middle of summer. It's another bird. They don't normally nest in here, but the flats is such a high quality, gigantic landscape scale wetlands system. We were still seeing them during the breeding season. Remarkable. There's your adult gallinule, the little chicks, the bald guys, that's the adult. Another IBA trigger species, very rare in the state of Michigan, definitely declining, and they're quite common on the flats. Randy, you should probably. For years we've been seeing these pie-billed grebes all over the place, but we never would see the babies. And then this particular visit, we're like, that's not a tern baby. What is that thing?
You chased this one?
Yeah, I think we chased,
Long ways.
and this guy was able to go underwater already, which the terns don't do. And that was another clue I had that, this is something else. And I eventually tracked him down. It was really hard to catch. But that's a baby pie-billed grebe, little pip tooth. Yeah, close. And you can see, oh my gosh, it was so cute.
It was.
And you can see that how each toe on the grebe has the flanged edge. It's not webbed like a duck. It's ringed in a flange of flesh. Gorgeous little bird. Purple martins, the big swallows, the big guys. That's another, these aerial insectivores is another class of birds that's declining gravely. We've lost them in a huge percentage of our atlas blocks in the state of Michigan. St. Clair Flats is yet another species that the Flats supports, and in large part because the people out there have maintained the colony boxes. There's so many of those islands out there have the boxes. Aircraft. Yeah, anybody? Extra credit, you get 2 points for this one.
Gospel.
You could say gas hawk, maybe. Yeah.
Gas hawk.
Yep. So, with Selfridge being nearby, there's always interesting aircraft around, and I don't know what that is, but he always is coming overhead like this and making big rounds of the Lake St. Clair.
It's a drone.
And so the public advocacy piece and that side of things is really an increasing focus. This talk is actually my first non-technical public talk that I've done about this project, and I'm super excited about it. So we are getting more and more people out in the ecosystem. This gives you an idea of what the mats look like. That's actually my stepson, by the way. There's the nest. Do y'all see it? You could walk by this thing 1,000 times and think, that's just another, nothing to see here, right? And there is a black tern nest. That's the adult in the hand. Again, it looks big, and then you get it in your hand, you're like, there's nothing here. Absolutely nothing there. It's a tiny, very, very lightweight bird. There's the band. That's the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service band. I was hoping that one went up for sale, and I'm like, man, if I could buy that. I probably shouldn't have worked for Audubon if I wanted to be buying vacation homes, though. I don't even know whose photo that is. I think it might be Roger's, but I can't get photos that good. But that just gives you a perfect expose of what the bird looks like. Such a gorgeous, elegant little creature. Redhead ducks. This is a distant photo. Redhead duck is it's another species that doesn't summer here. They go up into the prairie pothole regions and up into Canada to breed in the summertime. But there's a flock that stays and nests on St. Clair Flats. Very, very rare nesting duck in the state of Michigan. I had to draw attention to this. This is Randy's car. He's got the ducks and he's got the eBird in the same thing. I love it. He's the only one I've ever seen that has both of those. And we need more of them.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of slack from some duck hunters.
I can only see. I offered to do a duck hunting talk, and the guys said, the DNR guys, Randy wasn't there that day, and the DNR guys are like, I don't think Randy's going to want to be there for that one. I said, that's fine. I'll take him out. I'll pull his picture out of there. I won't go into this stuff. Just real briefly, just so you have some broad numbers. St. Clair Flats puts out a lot of chicks. That's a very good thing. Now, we don't have a lot of context for these numbers yet, but we have estimated a minimum hatching success of 51% in each of the years, and it seems to be staying the same. So that's rock bottom. If all of the ones that we don't know what happened to them had died and not hatched, it would still be 51%. If the unknowns had hatched, it might be as high as 80 or 90%. And realistically, it's probably in the middle. But that's a very good starting figure. A lot of sites that Dave Sheeler has studied in Wisconsin don't go near 50%. It might be 10 and 20%. So that's a very encouraging sign. As I said, it was storms, not predators so far. Same thing, I won't get into the details here too much. That's a bird with a dragonfly. They do catch dragonflies too. All right, so moving forward, we are going to increase our advocacy and outreach piece. The first thing I want to draw attention to, because you guys are kind of a technical crowd, Randy and the other person that will be the lead, we're going to transition Randy out over the next couple of years so he can be a grandpa and a better husband. We don't want him in the doghouse. He's been there. So we're bringing in, with the help of Detroit Audubon, a new person to begin training so that over the next 2 to 3 years they can completely take over, and we might even get a master's student who can be out there every single day and really refine the study. What I want to draw your attention to is when that person's out in the boat, we want there to be one person with them every single visit. So this is like twice a week starting in mid-May going into about mid-July. So if you're interested in being out, Vicki has already been.
It's great. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. I had the best day.
And everybody that we've sent out has had that experience. So we have basically we set dates to visit to do all this work and to be out there. So, you know, you have to meet out on Harson's Island. Randy picks up the boat, fills it up with fuel. You go in, put in, you spend the whole day out on the flats, checking every nest and GPSing and, you know, tracking birds, capturing. And my point was just that we send out a volunteer with him every single visit for safety reasons. We want at least 2 people. If you are interested in doing that, we may or may not have openings, because what's happening now is there's so much interest in the project, the thing fills up like that. If you don't get to do that, one of the things we are working on, maybe, do you want to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are working to get a boat tour to go by the colony so people can see from a distance, and we'll disturb the birds, what's happening, get a good look. So we're looking at a boat now that can fit 25 people, and we're hoping that we'll charge a small fee and that could go towards funding the project.
Yeah. So I was actually talking with somebody in the Macomb Planning Commission last week, and they've got this Lake St. Clair Metro Park Discovery boat, which holds up to 25 people, and we're just in the beginning stages of getting that set up. But watch our Facebook pages, both the Detroit Audubon Facebook page that Tara maintains, and then my supervisors who are in the Audubon Chicago region Facebook page. If you Google it, it comes right up. You don't need to know the URLs. We will announce there, and we will do our best to announce with the library and all the outlets around here. If anybody can help us get the word out on the project locally, we would really appreciate that too.
So I'm also looking for volunteers that would help with the education outreach piece. So I'm hoping to maybe work with libraries like this, where I go and speak to some kids and read some stories. If you have any interest in education, you can send me an email. Yeah, and then the boat is actually much nicer than what they take to get out to the site.
The one we take is a little, I wouldn't say iffy, but it's not a comfort boat. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
We feel each wave.
I want to get a nice glass of wine, make it a relaxed.
Yeah. If you come with us, your wine will be up in the air. I do want to draw attention to the DNR is doing a tour of the actual refuge on Harson's Island on March 26th at 9 a.m. That's a rare opportunity to get in there. This is not the Tern area. The Terns will not be here. They're still in the tropics. But get down there and go on that if you can. They've got some amazing duck habitat down in there that you won't get into any other time of year. And I must put in a plug, because we are growing this program into a regional vision to conserve and monitor black terns throughout the Great Lakes region. That's what this poster here is all about. I'll leave it up if you all would like to look through it a little bit. We have presented this regional vision to all of the agencies, Fish and Wildlife Service, DNR, U.S. Forest Service, NGOs. We're going to professional conferences. And we are really trying to grow this into a vision to stop the decline of black terns in the region, so that they are there 100 and 200 years from now for our grandkids and great-grandkids. So we certainly would be happy to accept donations if they are on offer. The place to do that is you can go to the Audubon Chicago region office. Don't worry about the URL, but I just want you to be aware that we have a place for that now. We are also pursuing a whole bunch of grant money for this, but we really do need local grassroots support so that we can pay Randy and the people that replace him. And you could just put it straight in his pocket too as he's leaving the place too. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. And that's my contact information. This is our website for chicagoregion.audubon.org. And then, is it detroitaudubon.org?
Yes.
Okay, so detroitaudubon.org. And thank you for being here. Did I take any questions?